In December of 1944, three American intelligence officers entered a building in southern France and did not leave for 6 days. Their names appear on a transportation manifest. They appear on a requisition form for radio equipment. But in the official Army records for that week, they do not exist. This is not an oversight. This is deliberate. The operation they were conducting had no code name. It had no authorization signature. And for nearly 40 years, it had no declassified file. What it did have was a single word written in the margin of a requisition document. The word was mirror. In the final months of World War II, Allied intelligence faced a problem that could not be solved by traditional means. German military intelligence had begun identifying double agents with increasing accuracy. Resistance networks were collapsing. Radio transmissions were being traced. And something deeper was wrong. Allied command suspected a penetration. Someone on the inside was feeding information back to German intelligence. But the evidence was circumstantial. The losses were consistent with bad luck or operational error. Nothing could be proven. A decision was made, not at the highest levels, not through official channels. A decision made by three officers in a field intelligence unit operating behind what was still, at that time, contested territory. They would run a test. They would create false intelligence. They would feed it into their own network, and they would monitor what happened next. The operation required something unusual. It required lying to their own command. The building they occupied was a former Vichy administrative office. It had been abandoned during the Allied advance. It still had telephone lines. It still had electrical power. And according to a logistics report filed 3 weeks earlier, it was scheduled for use as a temporary intelligence collection site. The three officers arrived on December 9th. They brought radio equipment, cipher materials, and a typist. They also brought a set of documents that did not correspond to any real operation. These documents described an Allied plan to land paratroopers behind German lines near the town of Colmar. The drop was supposedly scheduled for December 15th. The objective was to cut a specific rail line and disrupt German reinforcements moving toward the Ardennes. None of it was real, but the documents looked real. They had proper formatting. They had authorization signatures, forged but convincing. They had operational details, unit designations, and map coordinates. The officers placed these documents into the intelligence distribution system. They coded them as restricted but not top secret. They ensured the documents would be seen by a specific group of intelligence staff and field commanders. Then they waited. On December 11th, a radio intercept was logged by a British signals unit monitoring German military communications. The intercept was routine. It referenced increased German patrols near Colmar. It mentioned railway security. It did not explicitly mention paratroopers, but the timing and the location matched. Someone had passed the false intelligence to the Germans. The three officers in the building knew this within hours. They had access to the intercept logs. They recognized the correlation immediately, but they did not report it. Instead, they continued the operation. What happened next is documented only in fragments. A partial after-action report, a set of radio logs with missing entries, and a single memorandum written 6 months after the war ended. According to the memorandum, the officers decided to expand the deception. They created a second false operation. This one described a planned sabotage mission targeting a German fuel depot. Again, they placed the documents into the intelligence system. Again, they monitored German communications. And again, within 48 hours, German forces reacted. But this time, something went wrong. On December 14th, a resistance cell operating near the supposed location of the fuel depot was surrounded and destroyed by German forces. 12 people were killed. The resistance network in that region collapsed. The three officers learned of this through a separate intelligence report. The report made no connection between the resistance cell and the false operation. But the officers understood. The Germans had not simply intercepted the intelligence. They had acted on it aggressively. And in doing so, they had destroyed an asset the Allies did not intend to lose. The officers faced a decision. They could report what they had done and risk court-martial for conducting an unauthorized operation. They could continue and risk further losses, or they could stop and leave the penetration unidentified. According to the memorandum, they chose to continue. The next phase of the operation involved a narrower distribution. The officers created a third set of false documents, but this time they limited access to a small group of personnel. 4 intelligence officers, 2 field commanders, 1 radio operator. Each received slightly different versions of the same false intelligence. The goal was to identify which version would reach the Germans, and therefore, which individual was responsible for the leak. On December 17th, a German radio transmission was intercepted. It referenced details that appeared in only one version of the false intelligence. The version given to a single American intelligence officer stationed at a field headquarters near Strasbourg. The 3 officers now had a name. What they did with that name is not recorded. The individual in question continued to serve in his position through the end of the war. He was not arrested. He was not reassigned. He was not questioned, at least not officially. But 6 weeks later, he was killed in what was described as a vehicle accident. The accident occurred on a clear day, on a straight road. No other vehicles were involved. The official report listed the cause as mechanical failure. The 3 officers who ran the operation never mentioned his name in any document that survived. In March of 1945, the temporary intelligence site in southern France was closed. The building was returned to civilian authorities. The radio equipment was requisitioned for other uses. The typist was transferred, and the 3 officers returned to their regular assignments. No report was filed. No commendation was issued. No record of the operation entered the official archives. But the word mirror appeared one more time, in a personnel file belonging to one of the 3 officers, written in pencil, in the margin of a fitness report dated April 1945. Next to it, a single notation: demonstrated initiative under difficult circumstances. Decades later, when portions of wartime intelligence files were declassified, researchers found references to an operation with no name, transportation logs that didn't align with any known mission, radio requisitions that had no corresponding activity reports, and a memorandum describing an unauthorized counterintelligence operation conducted in December of 1944. The memorandum was incomplete. Several pages were missing. The names of the officers involved were redacted, and the outcome of the operation was summarized in a single line: objective achieved, no further action recommended. The resistance cell that was destroyed near Colmar is commemorated on a memorial in the town square. 12 names are listed. Local historians know they were killed in December of 1944. They do not know why German forces targeted that location on that particular day. The intelligence officer who died in the vehicle accident is buried in an American military cemetery in France. His grave is marked with his name, rank, and date of death. The word accident does not appear, and the 3 officers who spent 6 days in a building in southern France never spoke publicly about what they did. One of them lived until 1998. He gave no interviews. He left no memoir. When asked about his service during the war, he said only that he had worked in intelligence and that most of what he did was boring. The operation had no official name. It had no authorization. It had no oversight. It was conceived, executed, and concluded by 3 men who believed that the rules in that moment were insufficient. They identified a traitor. They may have arranged his death, and they accepted that history would never acknowledge what they had done. In the archives, the operation exists only as fragments: a requisition form, a marginal note, a redacted memorandum, and a single word. Because what they created was a reflection: false intelligence designed to reveal the truth, a lie that exposed a liar, and a piece of history that was never meant to be written down. This has been an examination of what does not appear in the official record: operations that succeeded by remaining silent, decisions made in the space between orders and outcomes. There are others. Thank you for listening.